The following video contains language that may be inappropriate for young viewers. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Welcome to Behind the Bars, where we bring the unseen and the unheard stories from the depths of the prison system to the forefront. I'm your host, Jason Boss, and together we'll explore the madness, the chaos, and the harsh realities hidden behind the steel doors of prisons worldwide. From the local jailhouse to death row across the world, we'll show you the isolation, the seclusion, and the decades spent enduring unimaginable conditions. These are the stories of survival, struggle, and humanity in places most of us will never see. We're here to shine a light on what society often forgets, the voices of the incarcerated. Each story is real, each voice is authentic, and every moment reveals the raw, unfiltered truth of life behind the bars. Join me for a journey like no other, a journey into the darkness, the truth, and the resilience of the human spirit. This is Behind the Bars, real life, real stories.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, thank you so much for being on this extra special podcast. This is Behind the Bars, and I am your host, Jason Boss. I have a very special guest today. His name is Jeremy Busby. He has been doing 25 years of a 75-year bid, and it is with my privilege and it is with my honor. I can't thank him enough for being on this podcast. Jeremy, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Thank you, Jason, for having me on, and I'm excited to talk to your audience behind the bars.
Absolutely. Well, we have been an advocate for our brothers and sisters behind the bars, and I have a tremendous amount of experience with those in Texas. And so I guess, how long have you been down? 25 years flat right now?
Yeah, actually, I'm in my 27th year, and I got 26 years flat, and about 4.5 months into my 27th year. So.
Okay, and what were your charges that you got that for?
I got arrested in January 11, 1999 for a first-degree murder charge that occurred October the 1st in 1998. And shortly after my arrest, and probably about 4 months later, I went to trial. I had a jury trial. I was represented by a court-appointed attorney. It lasted approximately probably about an hour and 45 minutes. And sadly, I was convicted of the murder charge. And despite being a first-time offender and not having a criminal record, they sentenced me to 75 years in prison.
Wow, that is a long time. I've heard of some massive time that has been given for charges. Now, I guess let's take us through the beginning. Where were you born at?
I was born in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
My mother, Irma Jean Haywood. I'm the third child of 4 children she had. I have an identical brother named Jeremiah Busby. So if anyone was to search, not to confuse Jeremy Busby with Jeremiah Busby, we're 2 different people, but that is my identical twin brother. Sadly, at the age of 4, my mom worked the Mayflower trucking company. One time she was returning back from one of her trips, and she never made it back home. And after a long, extensive police investigation, we was able to find her car that was saturated with her blood, but we weren't able to ever locate her body. So at that point, that kind of triggered a bunch of negative experiences in my life. I was placed in foster care and separated from my brothers, and I kind of grew up in like an abusive, and it wasn't an ideal situation, the foster care situation that I was in, and so ultimately around 12 years old, I decided to leave that situation and run away, and I took refuge in the streets.
Wow.
And the people that took me in were already involved in like criminal activity or whatever, so I was immediately plugged into a drug house. This was at the height of the crack epidemic in the late 80s, and so I started, peddling drugs and stuff like that, and not necessarily knowing what I was doing was something that was wrong. This was something that I had been exposed to throughout my youth, and it was just a normal thing in the neighborhood that I grew up in, and And so after doing all of that and peddling drugs and being involved in all of this, I had a couple of stints with the police and that involved me going into juvenile facilities or whatever. And but ultimately, this dreaded night that caused this case to happen, I was selling drugs. And I was selling drugs out this motel on the north side of Dallas. Another guy that I was familiar with, we was also in business together. So this particular night, I went out to a nightclub with a friend of mine. And when we returned back to the motel, there was a couple of guys in the parking lot that I never even knew. I'd never seen them before. And so they rushed our vehicle, and they was trying to sell us drugs. They thought we was there to buy drugs. And so I informed them that we wasn't there to buy drugs, to get off the vehicle, and they was kind of still aggressive about trying to sell us drugs. And then when I got a little bit more aggressive in my tone, and we stepped out the vehicle, the guy was upset at the way I had spoke to him about, getting off the vehicle. And so an argument ensued. The guy took his shirt off trying to fight me and all type of crap, and the guy that was with him all of this is in my court records, by the way. Mm-hmm. The guy that was with him ended up testifying at my trial to some of this stuff. And so the guy that was with him was trying to, hold him back and tell him, leave it alone, and, he kept on, and he was persistent about it, and at that time I kind of felt like he was serious, and this is a dangerous area on the north side of Dallas, and this motel has contributed to multiple people being murdered or killed or whatever. And so finally, after he had overpowered this guy, after like 2 or 3 minutes of going back and forth, and we trying to, go to the motel room that we was assigned to, the guy, overpowered his friend. He rushed on me, and I pulled my handgun that I had on me, and I shot him once. And sadly, he died from that gunshot wound. And being 19 years old and raised up in this environment where you don't kind of really talk to the police and you don't really seek, refuge with the police or whatever, and knowing that I was already involved in criminal activity as far as my purpose for being at that hotel, I fled. And I didn't really know what to do. And about 4 months later, I was arrested, and then I went to trial and ended up with the sentence that I ended up with.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Let's break this down a little bit. How old are you right now?
I'm 48 years old right now.
48, and so when you're back to the story with your mom, how old were you when you guys found your mom's car?
I was in between the ages of 3, right about finna turn 4.
Okay. And are you in Gen Pop right now, or are you in SAG?
I'm in solitary confinement right now.
Okay. Now, let's go. What was the night of this motel incident? What was the date?
This happened October the 1st, 1998.
1988 or 98?
1998.
Okay, 1998.
98. And the victim of my crime is a guy by the name of Andre Wright.
Andre Wright. Now, did Andre have a criminal record?
Yes, he had based off. They wouldn't let it come out in the trial, but my attorney had told me he had been to prison a couple of times for assault with a deadly weapon, and he had a very assaultive history, and so I never knew the guy. He wasn't from my neighborhood. I didn't grow up with him. I was never involved in any type of gang activity, so we wasn't robbed of gangs or anything. We wasn't sleeping with the same woman or nothing. From the time that I met him and to the time that he died, that was probably the time that I shot him. I think he died a few hours later at the hospital, but from the time that I met him to the time that I shot him, I think it was all about maybe 3 minutes.
Now, was this guy trying to rob you? Is that what this was going down, or what was his purpose?
No, at this particular motel, they do what they call car chasing, right? So it's on the north side of Dallas, and you have a bunch of wealthy people that comes from like the Highland Park area. If people not familiar with that, there's places like where Jerry Jones and Ross Perot and people live at. And so these people will come through this motel and kind of just like do a drive-through. And so these guys will run out to the car and be like, I got the drugs right here. And they'll make the drug deal. The guy never gets out the car, or the lady never gets out the car. They go ahead and purchase their drugs and just keep on driving through. So when we pulled up, it was like 4:30 in the morning, a.m. So no one pulls up at this motel at that time unless you're really, involved into some shit. Excuse my language.
You're fine.
So when we pulled up at like 4:30, they thought we was there to buy drugs, even though we parked. So they rushed the car immediately. Like, I got crack right here. I got it right here. And so I was like, I rolled down the window slightly, and I said, no, we good. We're not looking for anything. And then the guy was like, no, but I got it right here, man. I got the real stuff right here. And so at that point, I cracked open the door just a little bit. I didn't kind of, hit him hard with the door, but I kind of pushed the door a little bit. And I said, hey, man, I said, we good. Get the fuck off the car, right? And so then he was like, who the fuck you talking to like that? And I was like, I already told you once that we was good, and you still on the car. Back the fuck up away from my car. And so he's like, oh, man, I'll kick your ass, using that language right there and all of that. And the guy that was with him, he even testified at the trial, was like, I was trying to, tell him, like, leave this alone, bro, let's go. Don't worry about this. But he was persistent at it. And so he's like, man, you don't know who I am, and this and that, I'll whoop you, and this and that, and this and that. And so when I seen it was kind of really getting serious, and the guy was really, really agitated, I kept his handgun on me because, like I say, this particular area is a dangerous area. And so, we're trying to walk to the hotel room that we're going to, and this guy's like following me and shit. And like, I'll fuck you up right now, this and that. And so it got to the point where I just turned around and faced him because I didn't want to keep walking away with my back turned to him. And so the guy he took his shirt off, and the guy that was with him was holding him back, and they was kind of wrestling with one another. He was telling the dude, like, man, chill out. And then ultimately he overpowered the guy. He overpowered the guy and broke him loose and came towards me, and I shot him.
Now, what kind of defense did your attorney pull up on this? Did you have a self-defense defense at all? Like,
No, my attorney, sadly, and this is how one of the things that the criminal justice system works, but sadly, I met my attorney the same day I started trial.
Oh, man.
Right? We didn't have any type of pretrial investigations, any time to really go over what was going on, or any type of budget to find, witnesses or whatever the case may be. And so what he basically was telling me, like, hey, man, listen, you don't stand a chance. At this time, Dallas-Fort Worth was really, really bad about gun violence. And he was like, man, you're a young black, African-American male. This was at this motel in the middle of the night. Pretty much the only thing we can do is just say that they got the wrong person, bro, and say it wasn't you. And so that's kind of like the defense that we went with. And he was telling me, like, that was the only shot that I had. He literally didn't call any witnesses. I was the only witness, and even though, like, the state witnesses, all three state witnesses were incarcerated, that they used against me at the trial. One of them was the companion of the guy that got killed. But all three witnesses basically testified to the same thing. This guy was very belligerent. He was hostile. He was going after Jeremy, and, Jeremy ended up shooting him. And it was an argument in the parking lot. All three witnesses basically said the same thing. So I met my attorneys the same day that I went to trial. The trial lasted about an hour and 45 minutes. I was found guilty. The penalty phase lasted less than that. They gave me 75 years, and that was it.
Wow. Now, did they do a talk screen on Andrew Wright?
he had alcohol. I mean, not alcohol. He had cocaine and some other stuff, in his bloodstream as far as the toxic results concerned.
Now, when you
and so I can tell you this real quick, so you'll know. Okay, all of these years later, I got involved with an Innocence project called Proclaim Justice, that's ran by John Horton from the West Memphis 3, and so him and his whole team pretty much went and reenacted this whole crime scene. They did a whole long investigation and talked to the witnesses that was there and people that was there that didn't even talk to the police that night. And but in essence, so he came back and told me, like, Jeremy, listen, we did everything, and all of this is documented. And John Harden and Proclaim Justice and Dan Waxler was the investigator that was with them, and so essentially what he was saying is, like, we investigated this, and we don't believe that this was murder at all. You shouldn't have even been charged with this, but sadly you was charged with it. They convicted you of murder. Well, because of their bylaws for Proclaim Justice only allows them to work on cases where individuals had absolutely nothing to do with the crime. He say we can't, from an official standpoint, take this case any further because it's clear that you the guy that had the gun and you the guy that shot this guy. So despite our position that we discovered that, this was self-defense, you stood your ground, you should have never been charged with murder. So from this point on, we're here to support you independently of the organization. But as far as our organization putting weight behind you and trying an attorney and all of that, it's against our bylaws to do that. But if it ever comes a chance to where we could, help you out or talk to people and let them know exactly what happened, we're here to do that.
And these guys, this John Harden guy, does he have all of the transcripts and has somebody pulled all of this info already? I'm sure.
Yeah, well, we got all of the info, but Dallas County Public Defender's Office was working along with them, and also an attorney named Justin Moore out of Dallas. Justin Moore is kind of prominent now. He worked with he represented George Floyd's daughter and a lot of prominent people. But so Justin Moore was one of the attorneys that worked with them, and they got all the files. But John Harden is from the West Memphis 3. I don't know if you're familiar with the third case, but he did time in death row in West Memphis, Arkansas, and they made a big movie and all of that stuff about it. And so when he got out, he got into this advocacy that led to this Proclaim Justice Innocence Project. I don't think that he's working with the Innocence Project anymore, even though he was the founder and the creator of it. But anytime that anybody want to see the transcripts or anything like that, John Harden got a complete copy of all of the records, and also the Dallas County Public Defender's Office has a complete copy of the record because.
Hold on, I just lost you. Let me know when you're back.
I think I went out for a minute.
Okay,
you're back. They worked in collaboration with the Dallas County Public Defender's Office.
Okay. Now, I will get that contact information from John very, very quickly. Were there any cameras at this motel at all?
Oh no! This was back in like I say, October 1st, 1998, and so it was kind of predated before they had all of these cameras or whatever. But it wasn't. There was no camera footage at all.
Did you waive your right to an appeal at the end of the trial?
No, we had an appeal, but the problem with the appeal was, okay, at my trial, I went to a jury trial with an 11-man jury, which is illegal in Texas. Okay, according to the Texas Constitution, you got to have 12 qualified members in order to sit, on a jury. Okay, so what essentially happened was, I met my attorney the day that we started trial. He's been disbarred, by the way. His name is Robert Michael Thomas. He got disbarred for like a couple of years right after my trial. So we're picking this jury. And so at the end of the day, the judge say, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and release everybody that wasn't picked, and the people who was picked, y'all report back to the court tomorrow, and then I swear y'all in and become the jury, and we'll proceed from that point. So the next day, I get to the courthouse. Of course, I'm in the county jail. So they take me over to the courthouse, and Michael Thomas tells me, like, hey, man, I think we got to pick a whole new jury. And I'm like, why do we have to do that? And he said, well, one of the people that we picked yesterday, she spent the night in the hospital suffering from an anxiety attack. And so she's here with her attorneys and everybody and her doctor and saying that she can't serve on this jury. And so anyway, so I come out in the courtroom, and the judge tells the bailiff to go get the jury. So the judge go get the whole entire jury, and the bailiff go gets them, and then so the judge swears them in. And so at the end of swearing in the jury, my attorney pops up and say, I object to this, you swearing in the jury, Your Honor. And the judge like, what is your objection? Well, it's obvious one of them is disabled. We learned this information this morning. They sent that information back to your chamber. And so if she's disabled, we can't swear this jury in. So the judge say, okay, well, which one is disabled? So she go forward with her lawyers, her doctors, and everything. And so the judge say, okay, well, according to Article 3629 of the Texas Code Criminal Procedures, I'm going to dismiss her as a jury, and we'll just proceed with the remaining 11. Right? And so right out the gate, I got 11 jurors. Okay, so when I get convicted and go to trial, go to an appeal, I never met my appeal attorney. Jan Hemphill is her name. I think she's dead now.
Who is it?
I never
One
met
more time.
her. Jan Hemphill, Hemphill, Hemphill.
Okay.
And so she brought up one issue in the whole entire appeal, and the issue she brought up was that this jury was illegal and shouldn't have been sworn in, and because of the Texas Constitution, the whole entire trial is flawed, and and this is the issue that she argued. Okay, however, the appeals court argued that that this issue wasn't timely preserved. Right now we're dealing with this whole due process thing with Trump. And so what a lot of times that the general public don't understand is that they have all these different type of rules and statutes that prohibits you from getting total due process. And sadly, I was subjected to one of those rules. Okay, the Court of Appeals was saying because my attorney didn't make a timely objection that he knew that the judge was going to swear the jury in, he stood there mute, allowed her to administer the jury's oath, and it was only after the conclusion of the judge administering the jury's oath that he decided to stand up and make an objection. And in the words of the trial court, it was untimely objection, and so the appeal court say they agreed with the judge, and that this was an untimely objection. And so since the objection wasn't made timely, this particular error wasn't preserved for appellate review. So they denied the appeal. And so later on, I decided to file a writ of habeas corpus, which is the next step, right? And so in the writ of habeas corpus, I'm telling the courts, like, okay, well, I agree with the trial court, and I agree with the appeals court. My attorney stood mute, allowed this to happen. It was way too late when he made the objection. So as a result of that, I'm saying that my attorney was ineffective, and he should have did more. He should, I agree with both of these courts, and so I'm gonna seek a new trial based off the ground of error of ineffective assistance of counsel. Of course, that was denied.
All right. What date was the appeal? When did you do this appeal?
The appeal was like. It happened right after my trial. My trial was like in 1999. I think it was in April 1989. And then the appeal didn't necessarily get ruled on, I think, until like 2001. But it was in the 5th District Court of Appeals in Dallas.
Okay. And when was, as far as you know, when was Robert Michael Thomas disbarred?
I think if you check with the Texas State Bar and confirm this, but I think it was somewhere around 2000. I think he got suspended like in 2001, and then they reinstated him, and then like around 2003, there was some more stuff that came up to where they ultimately just disbarred him.
Okay. And have you're in SAG right now? Have you been in Gen Pop before?
Yeah, of course, I've been in general population, okay, ever since when I first came to prison, of course, the law area was my zone, and I had some good mentors and stuff that I was fortunate to be around, and they was like, you don't want to be the guy at the domino table, you don't want to be the guy standing up under the ESPN TV, you got 75 years, your job is to go to the law area. So I went down to the law area religiously every day for 10 years. I went for 2 hours, 5 days a week for 10 years straight. And in the process of me being down in the law area, I started to cultivate friendships and associations with people that inspired me to go to school. So during the time that I've been in prison, I was able to attain 3 associate degrees from Lee College. I got my bachelor's and my master's degree from the University of Houston Clear Lake. And ultimately, I got involved in journalism. And I became the first black staff writer in the history of the Texas prison newspaper, The Echo. And I worked there for a period of time. And I've been a volunteer worship leader. Later on, you'll probably get a chance to interview my friend Theodore Amy. And I met him when I was in prison. I'm known for organizing a bunch of concerts and marriage seminars and other peer support groups and everything.
Okay, so
hold on, excuse me for a second.
Yep. I'm gonna start talking to those that are out there on this podcast, guys. Those of you that have been on Behind the Bars, those of you guys that are listening, you guys have heard these kind of stories before. We've heard of these attorneys that are just very, very incompetent. And I'm going to put this out there to anybody that ever is able to pick up on this podcast. If you know an attorney in the Texas area, or if you are an attorney of any kind of corporation that has power that can help us out with something like this brother has obviously done enough time right now, because we've seen a lot of people get sentenced for murder. A lot of people are out in 20 years. A lot of people are out in 17, 15. And there's something very, very wrong with the statutes of justice when we are looking at a 75-year bid for something like this. It makes no sense whatsoever. And so, guys, I am going to put this out there, and I am appealing to all of the listeners that are out there from now or to whenever we get Jeremy freed out. Please contact me. All of my information is in the description below. You guys can get a hold of me. I am very prompt with getting back to everybody out there. Now, Jeremy,
you have 1 minute left.
I'm going to go ahead and wrap this particular podcast up, and I hope I can get you back on this podcast again very soon.
I would like to tell all the listeners, too, that they can go to joinjeremy.org and learn more information about me. Of course, I'm an incarcerated journalist, and if they just Google Jeremy Busby, they can find some of my writings, and some of them is about this case across the country and the work that we're doing. I founded this nonprofit organization that helps and is committed to promoting the work of incarcerated journalists. And so go to joinjeremy.org. And they can read more about our organization and more about what's going on. And I'd love to come back onto the show.
Beautiful.
And talk more.
Beautiful. All right, everybody. Thank you for being on this podcast. Much love to you all.